Well, hello and welcome, writers. Happy Friday. Glad you're here. Welcome to Writers Workshop. Today, we're going to be focusing on, I think, one of the biggest next steps for us as a class of fifth grade writers is really continuing to elaborate and make our stories feel even more detailed and more alive. And so here's today's I Can for our Show, Don't Tell lesson. I can elaborate and expand my fantasy fiction writing by using sense details to show, not tell, the events of my story. What you're going to need is our Show, Don't Tell exit ticket. You don't need it yet. We're going to listen and do an I do, where I'm doing some writing and showing you the difference between a tell and a show. But you will need the exit ticket eventually to practice it, and then you're going to need your rough draft of your fantasy fiction story to see where you can add those show, don't tell details into your story. So I want to start actually with a little bit of reading. I literally grabbed the first book I could find, because in fantasy fiction and in published fantasy fiction, professional authors really, one of the most essential components to fiction writing and to fantasy fiction writing in particular is bringing the story to life and making it feel alive. One thing that I've talked about a lot is with younger writers, it can, you get to that stage, I call it the grocery list stage of, as you're developing your writing craft, you can write a lot. You can think about all these different things that happen over the course of a moment or the course of a story. And you can do a really good job of spelling things out in order. First this happens, then this happens, then this happens, after that this happens, finally this happens. But what can happen is young writers often end up listing off just the things that happened, right? First I woke up, then I brushed my teeth, then I ate some breakfast, then I rode in the car, and then I was at school, right? And it starts to read like a grocery list, and it doesn't feel alive, right? You rode in the car. There are a number of different things that might happen, or you might see, or you might experience when on that car ride to school. Okay, and that is sort of the point of showing and not telling and really bringing the story to life. So y'all know how much I love Arusha. This is Tree of Wishes. This is the third one. Doesn't spoil anything. This section doesn't spoil anything for those of you that have read the first two but not the third one. And I just want to show just this passage of really showing the action and bringing the story to life. Okay, so all that's happening is Bryn in this case, the character Bryn, is swinging a weapon. That's it, okay? And often developing writers, younger writers that are still in that kind of that grocery story phase would, their story would be something like, she swung her weapon and then they won and the battle was over. But we could add more to that, okay? So Bryn grinned widely, then swung the wind mace over her head. So already we've got details, right? She didn't just swing it, she swung it over her head. She didn't just swing it over her head, she swung it over her head while grinning widely. That conveys that emotion. That tells us that she's kind of reveling in this. It's fun, okay? Let's move on. Bright blue light burst from the weapon. A screech of metal tore through the air. Up ahead, the towering wheel slowly began to turn. Okay, so just in those 4 sentences, we got a lot of details to really make that story feel alive and really make that story feel like really make that story feel like you can imagine it and really feel kind of tangible, okay? So I think that's a great example of, using those details like bright blue light burst from the weapon. It doesn't just say light, it says blue light. It doesn't just say blue light, it says bright blue light. Okay? Burst from the weapon. rather than it turned blue, right? It burst from the weapon, using those details. A screech of metal tore through the air. Those are sound details, right? We want to really incorporate all 5 senses when needed. You don't have to do all 5 of them in every single scene. A lot of scenes you're not going to be tasting or smelling anything, but there's our sound detail. A screech of metal tore through the air, right? And so by really using those sense details and really using those specifics, your reader is able to get a clear picture of what's going on in the story, feels more alive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do, uh-oh, hold on. There it is, ta-da. Let me zoom it out here. There we go. So what we're going to do, and this is sort of an example of our exit ticket, you're going to have some slightly different prompts, some slightly different tells that you're going to give a try at showing. But essentially what it's going to look like is over here on the left-hand column, you've got a tell. Right? The first one says, Alex, the school bully, walked over and pushed me. That's definitely some action. That's a good central conflict. Now, let's bring it to life with some sensory details. And again, I'm kind of doing this in real time. So let's think about if there was a bully walking over and pushing you. How would you feel while they were walking over? And then let's make some choices. Do you see them walking towards you? Or do you not see them? Do they push you in the back? Right? So it could be that it could be something like, and again, this is narrative fiction. This can be whatever you want. You can add whatever details. It's your story. So it could be, I was too, let's use the word engrossed. I was too engrossed or too focused on the Foursquare game to notice the loud clomping of giant feet approaching from behind. I felt massive hands give a violent shove at my back, and I fell, let's use a simile here, and I fell like let's say I hit the ground. Like a sack of potatoes. Okay? So really, these two things, the show here, or the tell here, and the show here, and in fact let's put a tell and show. Okay? Both of them are telling the same event of a story. But our show over here on the right is really getting into how a character is feeling and really making clear what's going on in the story using those details and using those specific words. Could I continue to add detail to that section? Absolutely. Okay, but for now, just to get us into the habit of adding more and more and more, 2 or 3 sentences feels pretty good. Okay, how about this one? Here's the tell. The principal announced the students of the week, and I wasn't one of them. So let's think about, and let's make some choices. What might our character be thinking about or going through if they weren't selected as one of the students of the week? Could it be that they're feeling disappointed or let down? Could it be that perhaps they're relieved that they weren't one of the students of the week. Maybe they've been getting bullied for being a nerd or something like that, and they don't want to get called out for being a teacher's pet or whatever. That's often a trope that happens in more realistic fiction, right? In middle grade fiction, of like, you don't want to be the kid that the teacher likes. That's not cool or whatever. I happen to think it's cool, but then again, I'm a teacher and I'm a nerd. So, fellow nerds, unite. So let's make a choice here, and then let's write that choice. So let's say this student really wanted to be student of the week. My heart sank as the names were read. As the names were read, and let's, we can make up some Bobby Moore, Jane Alexander, we know her. Moore, Jane Alexander, Frankie McDonald. The principal read in her, how should we describe the principal's voice here? In her, have her be a scratchy voiced principal. In her scratchy tone. I had worked so hard this week, and it was all for nothing. Okay, so there's, just off the top of my head, it's not perfect. I think I would definitely go back and change that one with a little more time to think about it. But, hold on. Texting a parent. And if I had more time to think about it, I think I would probably change some things. But that's already giving a little bit more of those details, right? My heart sank, scratchy tone. Maybe I sunk or I slouched in my desk and hid my disappointment in the pages of my science notebook. Sure, let's try that. There we go. Okay, last one. Let me scoot it up there for you. Zoop. There we go. Okay, last one. My mom got home from her business trip. I was really excited. So let's set the scene for ourselves here. If your mom's getting home from a business trip, where might you be in the house, or where might your character be in the house? What are some of the senses or some of the things they'd use to know that mom was getting home? Maybe we could do something like the low rumble of the garage door opening made my heart jump. She was home. I ran. Can we use a better word than ran? We could use an adverb. We could say excitedly ran. We could say I excitedly. We can use the one from Arusha. We could say I tore past the kitchen and I tore past the kitchen and threw open the front door. Mom was, let's see, how should we describe Mom? Mom was carrying her briefcase, her blue jacket tossed over her shoulder. Okay, and again, this isn't the whole scene, right? This is really just a little taste and a little idea of us to, an idea and a practice for us to add in sort of these sense details. So let's go back and let's look at some of these sense details. So like a low rumble, right? That might be like a sound detail, right? Made my heart jump. That's more of like a feelings detail, right? Of how the character is feeling. And we didn't say, I was excited, or the low rumble of the garage door opening made me excited, right? We said, we gave it an action. So that's the showing part. The low rumble of the garage door opening made my heart jump. I tore past the kitchen. So we're still describing in a little more detail how things are happening. Mom was carrying her briefcase, her blue jacket tossed over her shoulder. And we might even say she trudged wearily up the front steps. Okay, trudged wearily, right? Weary, tired, trudge, you're kind of walking with heavy feet. Okay, so this might be, this last sentence, what does that tell us about Mom, right? She's kind of tired from her trip, right? Maybe she's not as excited to see her kid as her kid is to see her. Or maybe we're not writing from a kid's perspective. Maybe it's a cat or a dog. Well, maybe they won't throw open the front door if they're a dog, but you know what I mean. Okay, so going ahead and looking at these different sense details gives us an idea of how to bring our story to life. Okay, so when I see in the chat, what if we have so many details we've not finished the story? That, you know what, that's next week's problem. Just worry about adding details today. Worry about that next week. And if it feels like too many details, you're probably right. Trust your writer judgment. Okay, so your next steps are going to be 1, the exit ticket on Google Classroom. You're going to have a few more examples of tells, and then your job is going to be to do some creating and write and show. You can make up whatever characters you wanted to populate that story, just to give some practice at showing and not telling, and really bringing out the different senses and bringing out the different actions in detail and bringing your story to life. Once you finish the exit ticket, then we're going to reread our first draft, what we've written so far in our first draft, and see if you can find some places where you were doing a tell, where you were just kind of saying what was happening rather than describing it. And then change that sentence, rewrite that sentence to bring out a little bit more detail. Okay, and if you're still starting your first draft, then once you finish the exit ticket, go start your first draft. All right, thank you everybody for tuning in, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Glenview 5th graders, I will see you at 2:15 for our closing meeting, and that's it. Good luck, happy writing.